Okay, I'm excited. So we're going to keep this brief. You know what we're doing. We're going to go through and list out our wide receiver rankings and tiers. I'm going to try to go as deep as I possibly can, but at the same time, I want to give each player their due credit. So before we get into it, go down there, drop that like, subscribe to the channel only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And if you want to get into Fantasy Football Draft today, go fix your life. Go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. A ton of fun. We've been drafting there every single day on the live stream. And when you go sign up with promo code FLOCK, not only will you have a ton of fun, but more importantly, you will also get our 2022 rankings. You'll get my entire list of Dynasty rankings. You will also get our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide that's over 130 pages. And you'll get our Dynasty Rookie rankings and a 100% deposit match up to $100. Go get all of that with just a $10 deposit on Underdog Fantasy and get into some drafts with us. But I think that should be it. Let's go ahead and let's dive into this video. And tier one, we're going to keep it brief. There's nothing to talk about. You have Ja'Marr Chase and Justin Jefferson sitting up there all by themselves. I mean, if you're looking at Justin Jefferson through the first 2 years of his respective career, you cannot find a single blemish. Like, he looks like he is legitimately one of the best wide receivers of all time, or at least is on track to become that. And this is a wide receiver that going forward, his situation is relatively stable. This is a wide receiver that is attached to Kirk Cousins. While Kirk Cousins may not necessarily be the best real life NFL quarterback, it doesn't necessarily matter whenever he is an above average passer when it comes to his efficiency, and he's supported multiple top end fantasy wide receivers throughout his entire NFL career. You like the fact that he is attached to Justin Jefferson and with Ja'Marr Chase, who is going to be our #1 spot because he has Burrow. Yeah, Chase has more target competition, but Ja'Marr Chase just put up equally as impressive of a rookie season. And on top of this, while you do have T. Higgins, you do have Tyler Boyd, the Cincinnati Bengals have hidden upside here. And the reason for this is if you look at their pace of play last season, they were a slow team. They weren't running a lot of plays. Maybe the reason behind this was they didn't have the offensive line. They didn't have the efficiency of the offense to just say, hell, we are going to run and gun. We are going to be the Chiefs. We are going to be the Bills. We are going to be Dallas. We are going to speed this game up and throw the ball over and over and over again. If the Cincinnati Bengals start to play a little bit faster this upcoming season, and they continue to condense their targets to 3 players and 3 players alone with Ja'Marr Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins, there is hidden upside. Ja'Marr Chase, Justin Jefferson, they will each have the upside season to season to be the wide receiver 1 overall for presumably at least the next 5 years. What else could you be asking for? Easily tier 1. Now going down to tier 2, we are going to have 2 more guys. We are going to go with Cooper Kupp and CeeDee Lamb. Now with Kupp, obviously this is the win now wide receiver. If you're going and getting in a real money draft on Underdog Fantasy, Kupp's going as that wide receiver 1 every single time. The season he just posted was obnoxious. We don't even have to get into it, but he went out there, he broke records. And I know that we would usually be concerned with an older wide receiver all of a sudden having a random breakout to that kind of tier, but it makes sense. The man went from playing alongside Jared Goff throughout his entire career. The second that Matthew Stafford comes in, we see the actual wide receiver talent that Cooper Kupp has. So it isn't random that you saw that elite level breakout. There's nothing to discuss here. Let's move on to CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb at 4 is right now on Underdog being drafted as the wide receiver 6. And we've talked about this before, but it's funny. CeeDee Lamb is still younger than guys like Kenny Pickett. Literally the #1 quarterback in this year's draft is older than CeeDee Lamb. This is a player that's going to continue to progress. We all heard the report. The man supposedly grew half an inch this offseason, put on 10 pounds of muscle. Now, I don't know what voodoo shop he went to grow half an inch and put on 10 pounds of muscle, but please send me the address. Please let me know how much it costs, because I will sell my soul if I can grow half an inch and put on 10 pounds of muscle, but that's not happening. And with Lamb, I don't care if that actually happened or not. What I care about is the fact that he has been able to see a jump in both his yards per route run as well as his target share from his rookie to his second season. And with Amari Cooper and Cedric Wilson leaving this offense, now all of a sudden, There's a ton of volume to go around. There's a ton of volume for CeeDee Lamb to finally take that step up and to be that truly elite level talent. And he's incredibly young, just like Justin Jefferson. So I am going to have CeeDee Lamb in the same tier as Cooper Kupp, despite the fact that CeeDee Lamb's best finish ever, wide receiver 16 on a per game basis. Now let's move to tier 3. And this is where I could go back and forth, back and forth. We'll start it off with our wide receiver 5, Deebo Samuel. Now with Deebo, there are red flags that I need to at least bring up. This is a wide receiver that has a long list of injuries throughout his entire career. That's why he stayed at South Carolina for 5 years. That's why he's older than a lot of other players in that same 2019 draft class. It's because he wouldn't have gotten the draft capital if he came out early. And we've seen that injury history continue to linger into his NFL career. Now, if we were having to worry about a player and their injury history, it probably would be a wide receiver that's getting an additional, 6 carries a game? A wide receiver that's touching the ball 10 times every single. That's the guy I would worry about injuries with. Now, you can say, okay, well, Mason, they're not going to use him as a running back anymore. They're going to get Trey Lance coming in. With Trey Lance, he's going to be more dynamic around the goal line. Trey Lance is going to take a lot of those rushing touchdowns. Hell, are you trying to say that's a good thing for Deebo Samuel? You're trying to say it's a good thing that Trey Lance is going to be taking those rushing attempts at the goal line and stealing those rushing touchdowns? No, that's a horrible thing. That's going to hurt Deebo Samuel's fantasy value. And this is why I am willing to move Deebo Samuel down. I mean, if you just look at his age, if you look at the fact that he was the wide receiver 3 last season, you'd assume, okay, well, yeah, you have to have Deebo Samuel ahead of Lamb. You have to have him ahead of Kupp. I'm not even going to have him in the same tier. I love Trey Lance for fantasy football. Y'all know nobody likes Trey Lance more than I do, given his rushing upside and the situation he's stepping into. Like, give me all the Trey Lance I can get. Now, I don't necessarily think Lance is going to be great for Deebo. I don't think Lance is going to be great for Kittle. I don't think he's going to be great for Ayuk because Trey Lance doesn't look like he's going to be a great real-life NFL quarterback, at least at this time. Trust me, I'm rooting for it. Now, our next wide receiver, this is someone I want to put at 5. I truly do. T. Higgins. Going back to what we were discussing with the hidden upside of this Cincinnati Bengals passing offense. If this team decides to push the pace of play with the upgraded offensive line this upcoming season, Higgins and Jamar Chase, they can be 2019 Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. What not many people are going to believe me with is T. Higgins actually had a higher target share on a per game basis in the Cincinnati Bengals offense than Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase was much more efficient. Jamar Chase had the touchdown rate. That's why he dramatically outproduced T. Higgins. But hell, we're going to chase target share. That's what we are going for. Now, I will say, of course, Jamar Chase will out-target T. Higgins this upcoming season. Jamar Chase was a rookie last year. I'm just bringing this up to show you this. This may not be a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 type scenario. This may be a wide receiver 1A, a wide receiver 1B type situation in Cincinnati. We know that the targets are going to be extremely concentrated. They will never put a 4th wide receiver out there on the field. T. Higgins is as young as Lamb. He was in that 2020 draft class, just posted a low-end wide receiver 1 finish attached to Joe Burrow going forward in a surprisingly or sneaky, however you want to call it, good situation. Love me some T. Higgins. Now, moving over to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown has an argument to be made to be more talented than CeeDee Lamb, Deebo Samuel, T. Higgins. Like, you can come out here and you can tell me A.J. Brown has that talent, and I'm going to agree with you. Because if you look at wide receivers that have averaged over 2.7 yards per route run over the past 3 years, you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Adams. Like, it's absurd to see what A.J. Brown has been able to do in a bad situation in Tennessee. Keep in mind, this Tennessee Titans offense is one of the most run-heavy teams in the NFL. But nothing is changing going over to Philadelphia. This is another run-heavy offense with quarterback concerns. Very similar to Trey Lance. I love me some Jalen Hurts for fantasy football. I think he's going to be an elite player given his rushing upside. However, there are a lot of games Jalen Hurts isn't even getting to over 200 passing yards, which should cap the ceiling of the wide receivers such as A.J. Brown. And what's different about this Philadelphia Eagles situation than what you had in Tennessee is in Tennessee, who was A.J. Brown competing with for targets? You had Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Like, is that really what we were competing with? Now you have Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. Like, if Dallas Goedert was on the Tennessee Titans over the past few seasons, Dallas Goedert would have been by far and away the second best receiving option on that team. So I think A.J. Brown is a lot more talented than some of these wide receivers ranked ahead of him, but I'm not building a real life NFL team here. I'm not ranking these players based off talent. I'm ranking these players for dynasty fantasy football. And that's why A.J. Brown's going to be behind Debo, behind T. Higgins for me. And our last wide receiver in this tier, Jalen Waddle, a wide receiver 8. Waddle had an incredible rookie year. Now, Thomas, please throw it up with the RotoViz screener with wide receivers that were able to command as many targets per game and receiving yards per game as Jalen Waddle this past season. Absurd, but very similar to A.J. Brown. He's in a really bad situation. While Tyreek Hill is not Davante Adams, Tyreek Hill is not going to command 30% of his team's target share on a per game basis. He still will be the wide receiver 1 on this team. So all of a sudden, Jalen Waddle, at least for this upcoming season and possibly in 2023 as well, is locked into being the number 2 option in a Miami Dolphins passing offense that will potentially have below average quarterback play. I am on board with saying that Tua is most likely a bad quarterback. I said this in another video, but I am hoping, I am praying that deep down, deep within Tua Tagovailoa, there is secretly a good quarterback hiding. But based on his adjusted yards per attempt that we have seen through the first 2 years of his NFL career, Tua Tagovailoa is on a pace that you cannot get excited about. Now, this may change with the new head coach coming over from San Francisco. This may change with Tyreek Hill opening up the entire offense, which is what I'm hoping for. But as it stands, it's a bad situation for Waddle, so he will have to be here at wide receiver 8. And now let's go over to the contending tier. Let's go over to these productive wide receivers today. Stephon Diggs, wide receiver 9. We'll just list them all out. Diggs, Adams, Hill. We're going to rank them in order of situation they're in as well. I mean, Stephon Diggs, you can't dream of a better scenario that Stephon Diggs is in this upcoming season. There's an argument to be made from a redraft perspective that Stephon Diggs could be the wide receiver 1 this year because there are about 160 targets leaving Buffalo, closing in on 200 targets with the combination of Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders. While, yes, Gabriel Davis put up over 200 receiving yards in a single playoff performance, I don't necessarily believe that Gabriel Davis is going to be some elite level option at the position. Dawson Knox isn't a target hog either. This team is top 5 in the NFL in pace of play as well as passing rate in game neutral environments. So all this shapes up to Stephon Diggs having the perfect storm to light the world on fire in 2022. Now, he's going to be a little bit older. He's older than Waddle. He's older than A.J. Brown. He's older than T. Higgins, which is why we'll have him down here with the contending assets. But hell, I think he's the best option between Adams and Hill. We're going to have Devontae Adams at 10 with Devontae Adams slightly older, but I think he doesn't have Waddle in his offense. And on top of this, well, trust me, I'm hoping it's not the case based on how much Jalen Waddle I've drafted on Underdog. I want to say Derek Carr is going to provide a better passing environment overall with the Las Vegas Raiders than what you were going to see in Miami with the Miami Dolphins. So if I was drafting a wide receiver for this upcoming season, I am easily going to prefer Davante Adams over Tyreek Hill. And the age gap isn't large enough for me to rank Tyreek Hill over him in Dynasty. Because also, if we have to make a bet on who ages better at the wide receiver position, I'm probably betting on the guy that wins with physicality rather than his athleticism. Now let's move down to a tier wide receivers that I almost don't know what to do with. Let's go to wide receiver 12, DK Metcalf. With DK Metcalf, I went from being someone that was fading him at the beginning of the offseason to potentially now interested. This is someone that has increased his target share in Seattle every single season over the past 3. This past year, he actually had 26% of the targets on a per game basis for the Seattle Seahawks. That's fantastic. That's elite for a year 3 wide receiver. And there's no reason to expect this to change anytime soon. Now, His production will change. That's 100% fact. With Russell Wilson gone, you should expect that this overall passing environment is significantly worse for DK Metcalf. But if there was ever an organization that I was willing to make the bet that they can go through and change things, it's probably the Seattle Seahawks, especially if we throw in the fact that this is a team that over the next 2 seasons is going to have 4 future first-round picks. This is a team that could also make a play for Jimmy Garoppolo. They could make a play for Baker Mayfield. I'm really hoping they bring in one of those wide receivers. At least you should be hoping for that if you're a DK Metcalf owner. Now let's go over to a wide receiver 13, Drake London. At one point of the offseason, I had London ranked ahead of DK Metcalf, but then I thought about it and I was like, okay, it's not like London's in a good situation either. If anything, London has more target competition with Kyle Pitts, and he has equally as bad quarterback play with probably a more difficult path to upgrade it, because it's not like the Atlanta Falcons are loaded up with first-round picks like the Seattle Seahawks. I think he's an elite prospect. He checks every single box that we are looking for coming into the NFL. He's my rookie wide receiver 1. We'll have him here at 13. I just want to speak on why we ended up moving Metcalf over him. And then our wide receiver 14 is going to be DJ Moore. Continuing to rattle off these wide receivers that have no access to elite level touchdown upside because their horrible quarterback play, the horrible offensive environment that they are placed in. But DJ Moore was dominant. He had almost 29% of his team's target share this past season at only 24 years old. Yeah, he was drafted in 2018, but the man came out as a baby pretty much in the NFL draft. So he's still only 25, just got the contract extension. The number 3 wide receiver in this offense is Terrace Marshall. The number 2 guy is Robbie Anderson. He's going to dominate targets yet again. But like I said, the overall offensive ceiling is capped just because the quarterback play. But over the past 5 years now in Carolina, they've averaged 6.05 for their adjusted yards per pass attempt, which is literally averaging bottom 5 quarterback play in the NFL. It can't get worse than what it's been for DJ Moore. You really just have to hope somehow this team brings in Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, Treylon Burks will be a wide receiver 15. We have moved Treylon Burks up ever so slightly. I think you could make the argument that you want Treylon Burks behind Deontay Johnson as well. I mean, it's a coin flip. You do you. If you're going to be a rebuilding roster, take Treylon Burks. If you're going to be a contender, take Deontay Johnson. If I had to make the bet on which wide receiver outproduces each other over the next 3 to 4 years, I'm taking Deontay Johnson. I mean, here with Deontay Johnson, this is someone that's demonstrated an elite ceiling with his targets per game over the past 2 seasons. He was just a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy. Now, the reason I'm taking Treylon Burks just over him ever so slightly, if you're a contender, get Deontay Johnson. But I do think we need to acknowledge the fact that Dynasty Fantasy Football is a marketplace. And what would happen if Treylon Burks comes out and puts up the wide receiver 18 season on a points per game basis versus what would happen if Deontay Johnson puts out the wide receiver 18 season on a per game basis? Treylon Burks in that scenario would be closing in on being a 2nd or a 3rd round startup pick, where Deontay Johnson probably losing a little. Like it's crazy. It is what it is. I think Treylon Burks has the upside for his value to increase more. Now let's go down a tier and let's lead it off with a wide receiver that I initially had ranked higher than this, but I think it's really hard to see how it gets that much better going forward. Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 17. Now, yes, I'm there with you. Zach Wilson's better than what they have in Seattle. Zach Wilson is better than what they have in Atlanta. Zach Wilson is better than what they have in Carolina. But given the team investment into Zach Wilson, I don't see how they move on from Zach Wilson anytime soon. Whereas with those other situations, I could see an upgrade at quarterback coming in that is better than Wilson. And I also believe that some of those wide receivers are going to be more talented. Like I think DJ Moore is a better wide receiver. I think Drake London's a better wide receiver. I think DK Metcalf, they're a better wide receiver. So if we're looking at all these guys that are stuck in horrible situations, Garrett Wilson's going to be the player that I value the least, given the fact that it's very hard to imagine how this situation changes anytime soon. He does have Elijah Moore for target competition, and he hasn't proven himself yet. I'm just a big Zach Wilson hater over here, if y'all can't tell. And in the same tier, we're going to have Chris Godwin, wide receiver 18. Godwin, the most boring player ever. Yes, dealt with a Very serious injury at the end of the season. That's going to be something that plagues him through the beginning of this year as well. He can potentially miss the first month of the season, but it's Dynasty. We're talking about long term. If you're a true contender, it may not necessarily matter if you don't have Chris Godwin for the first month of the season because, hell, if you're a true contender, you'll have someone else to put in that spot. You're really worrying about bye weeks. You're worrying about the playoffs, where Chris Godwin should easily be a top 12 wide receiver, as he is pretty much every single year. Still an extremely young player as well, 26 this upcoming season. Godwin, very boring to rank here, but we are going to have him. And then a wide receiver that I know not too many people are going to agree with here at 19, but hell, I'm looking at the splits and I'm saying he is easily the wide receiver 1 in Denver. Jerry Jeudy. I faded Jerry Jeudy last year. I faded Jerry Jeudy the year before that. But people, in my opinion, are disrespecting what he just did this past season in terms of dominating Courtland Sutton in games where they both played together. If you look at the splits, and with Russell Wilson coming over, hell, the reason why we were very low on Jerry Jeudy is now gone. We are very low on Jerry Jeudy historically because of that horrible situation. He's still incredibly young. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know if you think I'm crazy to have Jeudy at 19. Let's move down to our next tier, going to Michael Pittman at pick 20. Now, if you go over to Underdog Fantasy, hop in some real money drafts, you are going to see that Michael Pittman's consistently going in the middle of the third round. Like, people are sky high on Michael Pittman going into year 3, the same draft class as Jerry Jeudy. I am going to be hesitant. Now, I understand a lot of people think, okay, well, Michael Pittman can access an elite level ceiling this upcoming season because he has Matt Ryan and not Carson Wentz. I may agree with you that Matt Ryan is a slight upgrade over Carson Wentz, just ever so slight. Now, if it was MVP Matt Ryan, if this was going to be Super Bowl Matt Ryan, oh my gosh, he has more talent than Carson Wentz could ever dream of. But that's not the Matt Ryan we're dealing with. We're dealing with 37-year-old Matt Ryan that just got traded for exactly what Carson Wentz got traded for this offseason. And the Indianapolis Colts were already a top 10 offense in points scored last year. The Colts were already a top 10 offense in points scored last year. Michael Pittman Jr. was a high-end wide receiver 3. I think based on his target share and the fact that his touchdown rate should come up, he's 6'4", he's going to finish higher than that this upcoming season, but it's a run-first offense, and I don't necessarily think Matt Ryan's the same player he once was. So I will have Pittman at wide receiver 20. Also doesn't help that he wasn't a good prospect coming out of USC. I mean, if you look at Michael Pittman Jr. versus Drake London at USC, Drake London was almost producing the same level to him when Michael Pittman Jr. was a senior and Drake London was a true freshman. Now let's go to our next wide receiver in this tier, wide receiver 21, Chris Olave. Love me the talent. I mean, this is a wide receiver that checks pretty much every box that we're looking for, besides the fact he went back to school for a 4th year. That definitely sucks. But if that didn't happen, I promise you, he would be higher than this in our rankings. I think this is an offense that if somehow Jameis Winston gets back to what he was in 2019, Chris Olave does have a ton of upside. They can potentially move on from Michael Thomas if the rumors are true in that he's just completely done with this organization. Now let's move on to our wide receiver 22, Hollywood Brown, stepping into a beautiful situation with the Arizona Cardinals. You're going to have probably the best quarterback play he's ever seen in his NFL career. DeAndre Hopkins missing the first 6 weeks. He's stepping into the prime of his career. We can imagine that he's going to get paid by Arizona this offseason. Really no questions surrounding Hollywood. He's averaged close to 25% of his team's target share over the past 2 years in Baltimore. Now let's move down to our next tier. Let's go over to Mike Evans, a wide receiver 23. With Mike Evans, I don't know what we can say. We'll throw Keenan Allen right in next to him. These are 2 elite level producers for this upcoming season, probably 2023 as well. And then after that, I don't know what you have. So you should know this as well. They're contending assets. You know what you're going to get this upcoming season. Mike Evans is going in the 2nd round over there on Underdog for redraft best ball leagues. Keenan Allen's going in the 3rd. Dynasty at the devalue them, given their age, given their career arc. But it is what it is. Wide receiver 25, we're going to go Terry McLaurin. Now, Terry McLaurin in a very bad situation in that he is still going to be stuck with a bad quarterback this upcoming season. And unlike some of these other players like Drake London, you could see that quarterback play getting better because the Atlanta Falcons could potentially finish at the very bottom in the NFL. Well, I think Washington has probably too good of a roster overall to finish with the top 5 pick. I don't think they can get Bryce Young. I don't think they can get CJ Stroud. So I don't see this quarterback situation getting solved for Washington anytime soon. They go out there and they invest a first-round pick into Jahan Dotson this past season. Yeah, Terry McLaurin is still going to be the wide receiver 1, but bringing in first-round pick Jahan Dotson, that's not something we can ignore. Now, our last wide receiver in this tier will be Jameson Williams, wide receiver 26. I know a lot of people are going to have him over Chris Olave. I think Jameson Williams, you could make the argument, may be a better NFL talent than Chris Olave, but he's stuck on the Lions. There's a lot of target competition in Detroit. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you had DJ Chark, you had DJ Hawkinson, you had DeAndre Swift. He's going to miss the beginning of the season as well, so potentially you can get him at a discount next offseason, especially if Detroit ends up bringing in an elite level quarterback next year. But yeah, I think that's all I got. We were going to do our top 24 rankings, but we had a couple of those players in that last tier hanging over. But please make sure, if you have not done so already, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. Drop a like as well. And if you want to get in real money fantasy football drafts with me today, tomorrow, the next day, we do it every single day, go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK, and you will also get our entire list of Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. You'll get our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, over 130 pages. All with the $10 deposit on Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK, and they'll match your deposit up to $100. That's all I got. Hope you have a great day, and hope we get to see you with the video tomorrow.